Hi everyone. In today's video, I'm going to compare Torrent, Debrid, and Usenet, and I'm going to do that to answer a very simple question. Which of those three is the best? And to do that, I've downloaded 134 identical downloads on each of those three, and I will explain to you my results with a deep dive where I talk about bitrate, quality, price, and much more. So first things first, what about the results, right? So remember, I've downloaded 134 files. If we can see here, Torrent got 124, Debrid got 130, and Usenet got 131. But those are any files that I could have found, right? If you're looking at the high quality files, so let's say over 12 megabits per second or about 8 gigabyte files, the results are much different. And you can see that Debrid and Usenet, they have a high number of files found, but torrents only 26. But we're going a step further than that. We're going into 4K territory, so about 40 megabits per second or about 25 gigabyte per files. You can see that torrent only has 14 of those files, Debrid 59, and Usenet 87. So what does this tell us? It tells us that if you're looking for high quality files, Debian and Usenet is going to be approximately the same. But if you're looking at 4K files, Debrid will get you 43% of them, but Usenet will get you 65. And I have a great graph coming up that will explain exactly the difference here on the 4K territory. If you're having different results than me, this can be explained because I went for difficult content, right? I went for less popular, older files. I think if I went with the extremely popular files, of course, most of those numbers will be much higher, but I wanted this benchmark to be relevant. The other thing I did is I've limited myself to about a $3 a month budget or 2 hours of my personal time investment. What I mean by that is, for example, we know torrent is usually free, but I didn't want to waste like 20 hours to find the content and to really search the internet completely. So I've set myself a limit to 2 hours. I think it's fair considering that the other two are very cheap. Also, for the Debrid provider, let's just say I did not go with the one that was recently shaken up. And to declare a winner at the end of the video, what I did is I have for each of the three attributed a score out of 5. So for example, here for downloads, I'm giving 1 star to Torrent, 4 star to Debrid, and 5 stars to Usenet. The other extremely important criteria when comparing the three providers is going to be the quality of the files, or what is commonly known as bitrate. So for the people that don't know exactly what bitrate is, I will explain. Bitrate is the amount of data that you need to generate a file. And why it's important is I have an example here. For example, the file that you want is the Mona Lisa. To generate the Mona Lisa, you need a certain amount of paint. This will be your bitrate. If your bitrate is low or if your amount of paint is low, then that means that the Mona Lisa that you can paint is going to be extremely scruffy, right? It's not going to be good looking. On the other end of the spectrum, if you add a lot of paint or if you add a lot of bitrate, what's going to happen is your Mona Lisa, well, it's going to look the same. The reason being is there's a certain point where it doesn't matter if you had a lot of paint or if you had a lot of bitrate to a file, the end result is going to be looking almost the same. So what is important to remember here is that on bitrate, on quality, higher is going to be better up to a certain point. Also, as of now, don't worry too much about the units. Just trust me and trust my judgment when it comes to good quality files and 4K files. I know this is subjective, but I feel like my opinion is reflective of the general consensus of people. Now that we know what bitrate is, let's dive into the results. So I will explain the graph. On the left side at the bottom, you have the torrents. In the middle, you have the Debrid. On the right side, you have the Usenet. On the y-axis, it's going to be the bitrate and megabits per second. And you can see that I have put 2 lines here. The first one is about 12 megabits per second, and it's what I refer to as a high quality file. The second line is 40 megabits per second. It's what I refer to as a 4K file. And each of those blue dots is a file that I have downloaded out of the 134 files that I wanted to get on each services. And what we can see in the result is, for example, if we take the 12 megabits per second file, which I think is the minimum quality that I'd want a file, Torrent is really trailing behind. You have a lot of result that is under this line, and to me, this is not a file that I'd ever want, right? It's 2026. I want higher quality files. I want 4K files. On Debrid, it's much healthier. You can see that it's dragging forward at the top. And Usenet, it's also dragging a little bit higher. For each of the three, I have put the median. So for torrents at 3.7 megabits per second. Again, this is unacceptable. This goes in the garbage. For Debrid, you have 40 megabits per second. This is really good. And for Usenet, you have 71 megabits per second, which is higher, and it's really, really good. Again, just a reminder, there's a certain limit where the higher you go, it doesn't necessarily does a difference on the file. It all comes down to personal taste. Me, usually on really good quality file, I go with 40 megabits per second, maybe higher if I really, really like the file. But as of now, those are the results. And full disclaimer, on both Debrid and Usenet, sometime I had a file that was like crazy high in bitrate. I simply selected it to a lower bitrate to make it fit in the graph. And now for a fun fact, I have added on the graph what is the average, 4K TV file that is being sent to you. It's about 18 megabits per second. So you can see that Debrid and Usenet will have much higher quality file available for 4K. With all of that, on my rating, I'm going to give Torrent 1 star, and I'm being generous. Debrid get 4 star and Usenet 5 stars. Before we move forward with the video, there's a big elephant in the room that we need to address. The goal of this video is to compare Torrent, Debrid, and Usenet at getting files, and to rank them and to see which one is the best. But so far, what we can see is that on every metrics that I have, whether it's able to get the content or whether the content is of high quality, Torrent is dead behind. And in 2026, if you want a good quality files, Torrent is definitely out of the race. And I want to move this video forward and really go deep into why Debrid and Usenet are different and which one is the best. And to do so, but keeping the video relatively short, I need to stop talking about Torrent. So remember, Torrent is going to be out of the race. This is not what you need to do to get high quality files in 2026. And the rest of the video is going to compare which of Debrid and Usenet is the real winner here. The next criteria I want to compare between Debrid and Usenet, since Torrent is out of the question, is the price. On Debrid, you can get the service for about $3 a month, with maybe $1 extra if you want extra features. On Usenet, you need to do some Black Friday or / deal hunting. You can get it for $3 a month. And you can maybe add $2 a month for extra premium features. Of course, on both of those things, you can go overboard and spend many, many money on it. But usually with this amount of money, you have a really functioning setup. And for the test I did on this video, that's the money that I have spent. So for the ranking, I'm giving each of those 5 stars. Number 4 is download speed. On Debrid, I had about a 50 megabytes per second speed, which is around 400 megabits per second. On Usenet, I had about 113 megabytes per second, which is 920 megabits per second. That means if you're downloading at 20 gigabyte files, on Debrid, it takes you about 7 minutes. On Usenet, it takes you about 3 minutes. To be fair, I think my Debrid provider had some speed limits, and some Debrid providers give you a much higher speed. But also on Usenet, I was limited by my ISP, which is a 1 gigabits per second internet connection. If I had a higher connection, I think I could have brought this number higher. And for the result, I give Debrid 2 stars and Usenet 3 stars. Number 4 is going to be hardware and software. This is very interesting because it's one of the big difference between the two. If we go on the left side, I'm going to explain a summary of the process. So you have the initial software. It's talking to add-ons, it's talking to trackers, and all of this plays together and it's feeding into your Debrid services. and that Debrid is feeding into your screen and it's sending you the file. This process is very interesting because it has no hardware. That's a big plus for Debrid. But on the other side, software can be overwhelming. What I mean by that is when you have this setup, you know exactly what I'm talking about because the add-on and tracker side is extremely complicated to find. You have many community forks, you have many opinions on which software and trackers are the best. It's ever evolving. What you have as software today maybe won't be good in 2 weeks. The software that you have installed a month ago today has been replaced by another software created by another community member. So it's very active and it can be overwhelming to be on top of it, right? So what I like to call the left side, which is the Debrid side, I like to call it a leap of faith. So you go, you install your things, and you hope that the tutorial that you found was the right one, or you hope that the link you found was the right one, and you get this working, but it's a leap of faith. If we go on the Usenet side of things, again with a summary of what is happening, you have your software, it's talking to your indexers, it's talking to your providers, you are downloading the file into a PC, into our hard drives, and ultimately you're showing the files on a screen. So that means for Usenet, you need a PC, a laptop, a NAS, a server, anything that have hard drives that you can store the file into. For a lot of people, this can be a problem, but for some people, this is what they want because you want to keep the file at your place and you want to store the file for a long time. So it really depends on what you want. But this is a major difference between the two, which is Debrid having no hardware and Usenet having to have some kind of hardware to store the file. If we go on software things on Usenet, uh, as much as Debrid was complicated because you have a lot of different add-ons, trackers, software, on Usenet it's well-established software. So this is software that was tested and created by the community over the last few years. It's well-maintained and it's working really great. So in conclusion, in Usenet, the setup is longer, but it's more anchored because you have very well documented software documentation. For the actual scoring, I'm giving Debrid 5 stars because despite the fact that software can be overwhelming, the fact that you don't need any hardware to run Debrid is really, really interesting and it's going to be a big plus for a lot of people. On the Usenet side of things, of course, the software are good, but the fact that you need something with a hard drive and the process is a bit more complicated, and that's why I give this big win to Debrid. Number 6 is ease of use. There's not much to say because really on both Debrid and Usenet, it's very easy to use. On Debrid, you may have little buffering and cache, but overall the experience is very good on both, and I'm giving both 5 stars. For number 7, it's privacy and security. The first thing I want to say is be careful and do your own risk management. I'm going to talk about my overall experience on Debrid and my overall experience on Usenet, but this isn't advice to you on how to set your things. Just be careful, do your own research, and make sure your privacy and security are respected. I have brought up the little diagram I did of Debrid and Usenet because to understand the privacy and security, you need to understand the process. Again, as a quick summary, you're relying on Debrid side on add-ons and trackers that feeds into your Debrid, right? And your add-ons and trackers are community made. They're pinging servers, they're pinging websites that are outside of the process, right? So my first one is encrypted-ish. What I mean by that is, of course, the Debrid connection between the Debrid and you and to send you the file is going to be encrypted. But this entire process of relying on community-made add-ons, community-made website, it's not really the most secure things, right? There's so many softwares, so many updates, so many things that are changing every day that are made by people that do it for free. For me, I see a big risk, right? So will I need a VPN if I do all of this? If I were to run this every day, I'd ask myself the question because again, the connection between Debrid and your screen is going to be encrypted and secure, but all of this interaction is finicky. So depending on your risk management, this can be an issue for you. As I said earlier, all of this is done by people on their free time, but all of this has a lot of risk and a lot of money involved, okay? There's servers, there's bandwidth, there's uptime. A lot of stuff is expensive, and all of those people are doing it for free. So for me, I see it as a risk, right? It's like a free VPN. Like everybody understand that a free VPN comes with a lot of risk. I see it a bit like that. So it's free add-ons, free trackers, but I see a risk. Again, this is a lot of homemade software. I think those people are great that are making those softwares, but maybe there's going to be a mistakes, maybe there's going to be a leaks, maybe there's going to be nefarious people that wants to harm people. So the fact that it's you're relying on a lot of free homemade stuff, to me, that's a big bad sign. If we go on the Usenet side, you have your initial software. It's pinging indexers and providers, sending to your PC, and you can see it on the screen. So this process is encrypted. You really don't need any VPN. People are saying that you don't need VPN, even in country where usually you need one. So you don't need a VPN, and no free is involved. And for me, this is a big part of the reason that Usenet is more secure is the fact that you're relying on people, on indexers and providers, and those people are not working for free, right? So you are paying them, they are earning money, and they want to keep earning your money, so they need to have secure stuff, they need to have high quality and maintained software, high quality and maintained connections. So I think Usenet is much more secure than Debrid. This is, of course, subjective, but I'm giving Usenet 5 stars for security, and I'm giving Debrid 2 stars. And depending on your risk management, it can even be lower than that. For number 8, it's going to be a word that I'm not going to pronounce out loud because I simply can't. I've been trying for the last 15 minutes. I cannot pronounce this word. So if we go on the Debrid side, you are relying on live servers, live feed, ISP, and free trackers. That means that whenever you're asking for a file, you're asking for a lot of players to be under A game. If you ever have lag spikes, Wi-Fi issues, and whatnot, you're going to have a hard time having a good file that is playing. And what that means is that can be a real issue if you really want the file. If it's a high quality file that you've been waiting, it can be really frustrating. On the Usenet side, you're really relying only on your own Wi-Fi and your own PC and NAS. What I mean by that is on Usenet, what is happening is usually you're going to have a really good download speed all the way. But for example, there's a squirrel running up your ISP wire or whatnot, and you're going to have spikes, right? So imagine you're having a bad day on your internet and you're having spikes. What I mean is your file is not going to buffer. It's just going to take a longer time to get to you. Once you have your file on your home server, it's only a matter of playing it or having being shown on a screen, and that is only relying on local hardware and software. And it to me, it's much better. So I'm giving Usenet 5 stars and Debrid 3 stars. Number 9 is sound and language. On the Debrid side, you have excellent sounds, a lot of channel options, a lot of high quality sound, and you're going to have a lot of language options. This can be very interesting if you're looking for a specific language. For me, for example, it's going to be French. There were a lot of French file on Debrid. On the Usenet side, you're going to have excellent sounds again, plenty of channels. It's going to be equal to Debrid. The difference I found is that on Usenet, the language scene is not as developed as Debrid, so the language scene is a bit harder to perform. I'm giving Debrid 1 star for this and Usenet 0 stars. And finally, at number 10, it's perks and extra. I've already set a star each because I think those are small features that are interesting, but they don't make a difference overall. So on Debrid side, a lot of the Debrid provider that I've seen allow sharing of accounts. So that can be interesting if you have a friend or a family member and you're going to share your account with them, that is allowed. The other thing is on Debrid, some providers will give you cloud storage, so that is interesting. On the Usenet side of things, the entire process can be a bit more complicated because you need to have hardware and hard drives, but that can be a big plus because if, for example, tomorrow Debrid and Usenet burst down in flames, you're still gonna have all of your files on your own hard drive, and that can be very interesting for people because you're building your own database of files. You keep your stuff, and that's a good thing. The other thing on Usenet is sometimes VPN are going to be included in your subscription, even though the VPN included I heard are not the best. I haven't tested them all, but it can be interesting. The last thing is Usenet is going to have a very generous download limits. I've seen on the Debrid side, you're going to have a subscription and they're going to limit how much you download. On the Usenet side, I think you can download up to like 20 terabytes per month and you're not going to have any problems as long as you're downloading files for your own personal and not for like commercial use. You can download a vast amount of files on Usenet. So finally, after all of those 10 criteria, including security, hardware, software, the amount of content, and quality, I've compiled the score and we can see that Debrid has accumulated 32 stars out of possible 45 and Usenet has accumulated 35. So for me, according to my ranking and what I value best, Usenet is the best. That being said, for me, if we look at the score, 35 is extremely close to 32. So depending on what you value, for example, if you don't want any hardware to maintain, and if you prefer streaming over building a library, and you don't mind managing add-ons, then Debrid can be a real good choice for you. On the other hand, if you want the highest quality of content and the highest amount of content, and you want to build a personal library of your files, and you value privacy and security, and overall you don't mind maintaining hardware, then Usenet can definitely be the best choice for you. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this kind of content, like and subscribe. I have plenty more videos coming up. Also, if you want to try Usenet, check out the links in the descriptions. Some links are affiliated, which is going to support this channel. Thank you so much and have a good day. Bye bye.